Hello, Santos. Hola, ¿cómo estás, my friend? Welcome to the live show. Just trying to get my stuff together here. So, full disclosure, I've never done a live video before. I tested it out and it went rather well, but right before I went live, I accidentally clicked off the screen here. So, still trying to get all my stuff back together. I'll start talking in just a little bit. All right. Hey, Mark. Mark's on. So Mark is one of the he's another referee and a little co-host. So he'll if you pop questions in the comment section, he'll be able to answer some rules questions for sure. Um, but we'll give it a couple more minutes. Same thing with Eric. Eric's on too. Hello guys, good to meet you. Ratty daddy. Uh, I don't know. I don't really know how Mark asks. He's asking if there's anything he needs to do for sound or video. I don't really know how Facebook Live works. This is the first time I've ever used it. I wanted to do it in Facebook Live because it was a better, it, um, it was better for connectivity with the targeted audience that I was looking for in the volleyball dads group. I hope to at some point move this over to like a Zoom thing or maybe do like a reoccurring video. I think that would be pretty cool. But as for now, I'd just like to go ahead and get started. My screen's a little messed up, but we're just gonna go anyway. So, um, I'm glad that whether four people showed up or 14 people showed up or 100 people showed up, I didn't really matter. To me, what I wanted to do, the goal of this was to kind of put some information out there. I've been part of the volleyball dads group for about 2 or 3 weeks now, and there's a lot of activity, a lot of positive feedback, a lot of positive dads on there. People just talking up their kids, which is super awesome. I love it. I love to see that stuff. Um, but yeah, I can start with the local high school unit if possible. Are you asking specifically like NFHS stuff or um, like me specifically my area? Um, so. But again, I want to go over a brief overview of what we're doing here, what my goal is. Um, I kind of wanted to get some words out there, some information out there, because I know that the connection between the spectator and the referee, or even the referee and the coach, or the referee and the players, isn't as cohesive as it could be. A lot of people look at referees as kind of the dictator of a sport or dictator of the field, and kind of has carte blanche of what goes on and off the field or around the field. And I kind of wanted to take some of that mystery away. There are three disciplines specifically when it. Oh, I got you. Replying to Santos. Okay. So there's three disciplines when it comes to refereeing. There's USAV, NFHS, and NCAA. USAV, we are certified under their own referees. PAVO, the Professional Association of Volleyball Officials, certifies officials under for NCAA, and oh, I popped it out there. Okay, and NFHS is the overall umbrella for high school that govern high school sports. Stands for the National Federation of High School Sports. Um, and in the state of Texas, we have TASA, which is I'm wearing their jacket today. It's the Texas Association of Sporting Officials. Um, hey, babe, will you get my plug for me? It's plugged into the wall over there. I totally didn't get my charger for the computer. It's plugged into the wall. It's over there by the end table. Sorry, my battery is gonna die. It's like I'm a noob at this for sure. Um, and then underneath Tasso, each city has or each area geographical area has their own um, own. chapter, and San Antonio has the San Antonio Volleyball's Officials Association, which is where I'm a part of all three codes. So the rule sets are a little different for each one, and there's some minor tweaks, but again, we're here to talk about mainly about USAV. So what does it take to be a referee? Um, well, it certainly takes more than having your computer plugged in. All right, you gotta find a place to plug it in. You can plan for everything, but you can't plan for this. Um, I'll be right back. We have power now. All right. Call and get the conversation. Oh, you guys are doing other things. All right. So, moving on at any rate. So what does it take to be a referee with USAV? Well, just along all three codes, it's kind of the same thing. Uh, all referees start with the foundation of integrity, professionalism, honesty, respect, accountability, and reliability. The background of most USAV referees is in volleyball itself. A lot of the people that I've spoken to do have a background in volleyball, whether they're a player or a coach. There's a lot of players that transition to coaching, and then those coaches also become referees, which is something that's invaluable in the game as far as officiating goes. Now, my background personally is I was a player for about 4 years, 5 years, and then I did some coaching for about 2 or 3 years. And then looking for a way to get back into the game, I became an official. My daughter played for 2 years, so I've been a parent, a player, a coach, and now an official, as well as a spectator. Um, but yeah, Mark, you can be the bad guy. We're all about it. So we like devil's advocate. My wife gets on me all the time. She says, you're just arguing just to argue. So it's always good to have differing opinions as long as we can all respect each other's opinions. I'm all for it. But yeah, for sure. So when it comes to being specifically, we're going to specifically target like spectators and coaches in this particular overview, which is kind of what I tailored it to. So um, when it comes to interacting with a referee, you got to know your demographic, and know the background of the person that's up on the stands. And the kind of the takeaway here is you don't really know that person. You don't know how long they've been officiating. You don't know how long they've been doing it. You don't know what their background in volleyball is, and that's something you start to learn after a while, especially with USAV and local tournaments. Immensely more in schools, you start seeing the same referees at the same matches. But remember, indoor, outdoor, sitting volleyball, international volleyball, there's many different platforms to referee on. Um, so, uh, what I want to do now is I want to move into the roles and responsibilities of the first and second referee. So this is kind of the meat and potatoes of why I wanted to do this little symposium here, and beach, yes, beach, outdoor beach. Um, so the roles and this again, this is the meat and potatoes of what I wanted to talk about here in this little symposium. And granted, a symposium is like an open discussion. I found out after moving to Facebook that it's not really kind of an open discussion. It's just me on a video, and comments and stuff. So what I want to do now is I kind of want to talk about those roles and responsibilities. As the R1, the main responsibility of the R1 is to control the match, and that's the overwhelming goal for me personally. So let me qualify basically this entire conversation with I'm not here representing any specific organization, any specific chapter, or any specific group of people. I'm not here representing USAV. I'm not here representing officials in general. I'm going to speak from my personal experience, and I want you guys to share your experience in the comments too, as an official, as a coach, and kind of just kind of like an open forum in the comments, like I said. So again, so the main role of the R1 is specifically to control the match. Um, the overwhelming responsibility of the first referee is ball handling, and that's where a lot of the controversy lies. So, but when you take the first referee in general, the first both referees have to know the rules, obviously, but the first referee is looking at ball contact. Every single time a player contacts the ball, a judgment is being made. With that said, as a spectator looking at the court, and I actually wrote a blog about this. So there's different vectors, and the vector is kind of an average of views, right? So there's several different roles when it comes to volleyball. And you have the coach. The coach is watching from the sidelines, and the coach is watching with a strategic advantage of moving his players around the court, getting the right players in the right positions, watching the game overall. And the coach's objective is obviously to take his team to victory. The player is watching the game or participating in the game from on the court, and the perspective is kind of behind the ball, so the ball's coming at them, passing the ball to other players, and their main goal is to score the points. The the big dissonance is between what the spectator sees and what the referee sees, right? Which is kind of why we're here, or one of the reasons why we're here. So the spectator is looking at the court from afar, maybe not in an advantageous position. Somebody's blocking them or sitting in the stands, doesn't have a great position, sitting down, doing other things, distracted on phones or whatnot. And their main vector of looking at the match is more from the perspective of rooting for their team. So already there's situationally bias. That's one of those things that referees, we as referee, we can't afford to do. We can't be biased to any one particular team. So it's inherent when a spectator is sitting in the stands, um, that the spectator is looking at their team or their player or the people they're rooting for, the people they are supporting, the players they're supporting, and they're unconsciously biased to that team. Um, the referee is looking at the match from the R1 stand. It is the most advantageous spot to view the match. And the big takeaway here is that the first referee is not watching the ball, the referee is watching the players. And I've explained that to some people, and it kind of takes a minute to sink in. So as the ball's coming out of player watches the ball come in, set, bump, hit, attack. As the referee is watching the game, the referee is watching what the players are doing, and secondary is watching the ball. He's not directly watching, he or she is not directly watching the ball, but watching the players. That's where we see contact. The analogy or the metaphor I use, especially when I'm doing pre-match conference with some of the players, is a pitcher. It's 90 feet from the pitcher's mound to home plate, and the pitcher is pitching, 70, 60, 65 to 90 mile an hour balls. And the pitcher releases that ball, and the batter swings his bat, right? So you're told your whole life, keep your eye on the ball, keep your eye on the ball, keep your eye on the ball. If you're doing that as a referee, you're going to miss out on a whole lot. You're doing that as a spectator because you want to see where the ball goes and how they hit it and how it comes at players, and you're watching all this stuff go on, and you're looking for the entertainment. Um, the batter doesn't see the last 30 feet of a pitch or so because the ball's coming too fast. Brain can't process it. So the batter swings his bat based on where he thinks the ball is going to be, based on how the pitcher released the ball, and how fast it's going, where it was moving through the air, and then essentially it's kind of a prey and a swing. If you're watching the ball, you're going to miss the contact because you can't see it when it gets to the bat. I ask the girls the same thing. When you're bumping the ball, do you actually physically watch the ball strike your arms when you're bumping? If they say yes, I tell them they're lying because you cannot physically see it happen. When you're bumping, you lose the ball right at about eye level. And that is the main concept of what a referee does when they're watching the game and the players contact the ball as opposed to the game or the match itself. So we watch the players, and when we whistle that double contact, it's usually a pretty egregious double contact. Um, but that's how we judge contacts. We watch the player, not the ball. Watch the player, not the ball. Same thing with line judging. Line judging is all about looking at the line and not the ball. Because if you're looking at the line, you can see the line and you can see where the ball hits on the line. If you're looking at the ball, you, you're never gonna see it. It's not gonna happen. So yes, essentially, like Eric said in the comments, you're looking ahead of the ball. So if you're looking at the ball, you're gonna miss the contact. So you're looking at the ahead of the ball, and you're keying in on those fingers. You're keying in on the fingers, and as a referee, that can tell you a lot about how the contact is going to be made. I actually heard a coach say this the other day, talking to a player at the officiating table when we were getting ready to. They were the working team. She said one of the girls asked about, well, how do you see a double contact or something to that effect? And I was kind of walking up at the time, and I heard the coach trying to explain to her, was like, well, you can see when you mishit or mishandle the ball. Sometimes the ball spins off and it shoots off in a different direction. And I immediately kind of guffawed for a second. I didn't want to undermine that coach. She was talking to her players. I respected that. And I didn't even take her aside and say anything after that, because it wasn't my place. But as you can imagine, my first thought was ugly is not illegal. Spin does not dictate whether a contact is illegal or not, or contact is a fault. So we do watch spin. I watch spin, but I watch spin for completely different reasons because that'll help me judge on how they're going to hit the ball, where they're going to hit the ball. And it could indicate not necessarily coming off the hands if it's a mishandled ball, but when it goes into the hands. So if the ball's spinning really good and they're going for an overhead finger pass, I'm looking real close to see if they're going to make simultaneous contact on that ball because it's spinning so much. But no, it's not based on spin. It's not based on how good it looks. It's not based on. It's purely based on simultaneous contact on an overhead set or an overhead finger pass. Simultaneous contact, prolonged contact with the ball, catch and throw, and mishandling, obviously creating more than one contact. So we can talk about ball contact all day long as an R1. We're going to move on to some of the other things that the R1 is responsible for during the match. The R1 is responsible for the service rotation faults or the rotation faults during the service, position faults during service, contact over the net. And by contact, I mean over the net, meaning how the ball is contacted over the net, if players contact each other over the net, if an attack is hit and the ball is contacted over the net and then goes out, those lines. R1's also responsible for illegal attack and illegal block, recognizing that. And then, of course, your in, out, and your touch calls. So that's just a basic overview of what an R1 is really responsible for. So now, I mean, if we go into the USAV rules book, the responsibilities of the R1, there's a whole lot more that's pertaining to like coin toss and actions before match, pre-match conference, briefing the table, and so on and so forth. But I kind of want to relegate it to what I feel a spectator should be aware of, to be honest with you. And then an R2. So moving on to the R2 is responsible for a whole different set of things. And it still kind of baffles me how some coaches could, we'll call it misunderstand, or well, the reality is either they just don't know, they're naive, or they haven't taken the time to understand the different responsibilities between an R1 and R2. At many of these tournaments during our match breaks, I often R2 for other referees in place of the referee coach. And first of all, it's to get more experience as an R2. Second of all, I don't like sitting around doing nothing. I like to be up and moving and engaging. But I've had coaches before even address me as an R2 and telling me that I needed to call a certain call. Well, that was a double contact. And during the match, I simply, without taking my eyes off the play going on or off my attention off the net, I kind of bank it in. And when that dead ball hits, I like to go over and address the situation with the coach. And in this particular situation, I just went over and said, hey, coach, I understand that you may feel that was a double contact. I'm watching the net, and in my R1's opinion, it was not a double contact, or else he would have blown his whistle. And it's just as simple as that. So generally, the R2 is not responsible for double contact. So if you're as a coach or a spectator, if you're on the R2 side and you're yelling down there like, "Oh, that was a double contact, double contact," well, it's up to the R1 to make that judgment call. Um, Another thing that the R2 is responsible for, or the main thing that the R2 is responsible for, is net violations or play at the net and centerline violations. Those are the two big things that they're responsible for. Those, so I will specifically speak about the net violations as it pertains to USAB, and there's a lot of controversy around here about this. I've heard a lot of uh, guffawing and a lot of talking and chatting and kind of disgruntled people about net violations. So, as it pertains to USAB rules, the rules code states, paraphrasing, of course, net contact is not illegal, right? So, a player can contact the net between the antennas, and it is not illegal during the action of playing the ball. And I've actually said that specifically to a coach before. It wasn't during, she was all in the net. Wasn't during, in my judgment, it was not during the action of playing the ball. So, what is playing the ball? Jumping to attack, playing the ball, or moving to contact the ball in any way. And so that means jump, attack, and then returning to the ground and transitioning to the next play. So once you transition away from the net, that's considered not no longer being a part of the play, or no longer being in the play of the ball. Hair doesn't count. Uniforms doesn't count. As a matter of fact, I absolutely had a coach come up to me and specifically ask me that question because she was down reffing for me, and she said, "I just want to be clear. Uniforms are not a part of calling the net, right?" And I said, "Correct, correct. Uniforms are not a part of it." As a matter of fact, what I told her was essentially think of the only part of the body in play is the actual person themselves. Um, so hair doesn't count, jewelry doesn't count, shoes don't. Well, shoes. If somebody's putting their shoe in the net, we got bigger problems. Shoelaces don't count. Shorts don't count if they wear floating shorts, ribbons, all that stuff doesn't count. So there is some confusion there. But you're right, Eric. Absolutely. In the context of NFHS rules, as it still carries over this year, if I'm not mistaken, any net contact is illegal. Any net contact. And in my personal opinion on that is simply because they're trying to get these girls to focus forward, or look towards the future in playing NCAA ball, and just stay away from the net. Just stay away from it. Don't touch it at all. So if you touch it, it's a fault. And that's my opinion on that. I don't know if it's right. I don't know if it's wrong. And it's the same thing with the centerline violations. Great segue. So moving to the centerline violation, as with strictly pertaining to USAV rules, contacting the centerline is not a fault. Now, I have a great kind of anecdote about this one. I was down reffing for a national referee, a nationally certified referee. Great guy, really knows his stuff. Superb referee. He has great court presence. He knows the rules book backwards and forwards. He can handle the dreaded exceptional substitution and the injury substitution. He's refereed international ball before. Great referee. And I made a centerline call. I made a centerline fault call on one of our matches. Afterwards, when he was giving me feedback, he explained to me that the call that I made, although it was not inappropriate, he would not have called it. And he told me why. He said, "Contact with the center line is not a violation." I knew that. Going over the center line is not a violation. I also knew that. Going to crossing the center line with your entire foot is not a fault. I knew that as well. But if you look at the next bullet down in the USAV rulebook, it says, "But if you come into close proximity or impede a player on the opposing team, it is a fault. And if it becomes under the judgment of the first or second referee that it causes a safety hazard, then you blow the whistle and stop play." which is what I thought. I thought it was a little bit of a safety concern, in my opinion, as I recall. It was a couple of months ago now. The players were probably about 6 inches apart, maybe a little bit less. It was a little too uncomfortable for me, so I blew my whistle. Um, Thankfully, nobody had a problem with it. Nobody had a problem with it at all, which was awesome. Um, it, Once I explained why I blew my whistle to the referee or to the coach, she kind of was like, okay. She didn't like it, but she was okay with it. Um, Afterwards, the first referee came down when he gave me some feedback. He explained to me, he's like, that unless they touch each other, we don't blow the whistle. I mean, we just let them play. If they contact the net, blow the whistle. But going under the net, don't blow the let them play. So I also believe that USAV is kind of moving towards that too. Under the net, the centerline violation is going to move away unless the players actually make contact. So, but yes, NFHS is, we're getting ready to go into the high school middle school season here, and I believe, in my personal opinion, NFHS errs on the side of caution when it comes to that. What they do is they want to keep these girls out of the net, off the net, away from each other. They want to keep their feet away from each other. I've seen several ankle injuries that one I think was probably season ending for this young lady, because of contact under the net. So in NFHS, center line violate, you touch the center line. So that transition between NFHS and USAVs is at the beginning of the USAV season. It's kind of a little, there's some growing pains there for sure. But you're right. That is the biggest challenge from going to club ball to NFHS volleyball. It's that safety concern, and that's kind of the one of the big buzzwords. Um, but yeah, I mean, the constant evolution of USAV, I feel, is moving into letting these players play, men and women, letting them play volleyball, and that and a lot of this stuff is kind of in line with international ball too. But I don't want to get too far off the subject. So we got net violations, centerline violations. The R2 is mainly in control of controlling substitutions and timeouts, timing timeouts, the rotation faults or the position faults on the receiving team, and then second, and everything on his or her side of the net, the antenna going over into or on the outside of the antenna as it goes over through the plane of the net. And then lastly, way down the line, way down the line here is your in, out, and touch calls. Um, and this one I've seen stir up quite a bit of controversy too, especially when it gets between the line judges. And in USAV, remember, these line judges are, the players. So 14, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 players, year old players. Um, and I respect them a whole lot when they are line judges for me. I always tell them, like, you're on the officiating team now. You're on my team. We're on the team together. I got your back. If you have a problem with a call, give me a call. Make a call. As a line judge, make a call. If I agree with you, no big deal. If I disagree with you, chances are I might take your call if I know you're paying attention and I know you're watching. If I think it's close, I'll call you over real quick. We'll have a little talk about it. I always tell the girls, I say, don't move, don't shake your head, don't move your flag. Just tell me. I just want you to answer one question. Was it in or out? She says in. My next question is always, are you 100% sure? And if she says yes, I say, okay, move along. And then I usually side with the line judges. Um, uh, See, Eric says the line judges provide information to the R1. That's all. He can judge the quality of each call. Yeah, you're absolutely right, and that's exactly how I approach that situation, Eric. That's a great point. I always take into consideration what the line judge says, especially if it's really close to them. I usually take their call over if I think it conflicts. Like I said, I'll call them over. But I do take their calls pretty seriously, depending on how I feel they're paying attention to the match. And even though they get the briefing, it's like herding cats. Sometimes it's difficult to get those kids to stay focused, for sure. Um, let's see, Mark. The other big challenge, at least in my area, is that the ball handling judgment is very different wording. Oh, the guys in high school season. The guys' high school season is only 2 weeks after the club season. And the guys are always whining for a first few matches. So yeah, you know what? Yeah, I can see that happening. I value the day when Texas Tasso finally, or UIL, comes down here with boys volleyball. I wished it was when I was in high school, but it didn't exist. But yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of more complaining from guys than there is girls. I know the girls can tend to whine a little bit, but usually they back down pretty good. But I know guys kind of argue a little bit. But so moving on with the antenna, so the R2 with the in out and touch calls, just kind of rounding that out. So there's controversy a lot when it comes to in out calls, and we're gonna uh, the touch calls aside here for a second. So it's specifically with the in out call. So as an R2, when you're standing there at the net and you're transitioning, so this is great information for if as a spectator or coach, if you're ever wondering, a coach. Let me qualify this: a coach who is not also a referee, or a coach who doesn't referee. According to the Lone Star region here in South Texas, the Lone Star region, every team is required by Lone Star region rules, the handbook, to have at least one certified ref R2 on each team. So if there's three coaches, one of them has to be a certified down ref. Um, and that's for work team issues and whatnot. So as a down ref, the play is monitored opposite the side of the ball, or on the defensive side, and this is the best vantage point for watching for net faults, because most of the people that are coming up to the net are going to be your blockers. Um, so as an R2, when the play is going on, let's just say on this side you have the ball served, so you have contact. So you're watching the receiving team. Contact is made. You transition to the other side, and once you transition, you kind of get a gauge of what's going on around the court. And then if the ball's in the backcourt, and we won't, I'll try to not get into the minutia of the whole thing, but as the ball's in the backcourt, you can kind of watch what's going on during the play. So one contact, as soon as that first contact comes and it's a good pass up to the setter, or somewhere towards the front zone here, your focus immediately goes to the net. And as the R2, your job is the net. That is it. Nothing else. You can see the ball in your peripheral vision or what have you, but your job is the net. So my algorithm for watching the net is, when the players come up, both attack side and defensive side, is you watch the net. So you're watching the players come up. As they jump up into the air, you're watching the tape. And then the attack, you're watching for a contact. And then as soon as that attack is made, and whether contact is made or not, once the ball transitions through the plane of the net, you're going down with the players, down to the center line. So it's into the net, up to the tape, watch the attack, down to the center line, and only then, when the players start transitioning away from the net, do you transition transition to the other side, the defensive side, and you can maybe assist in an in-out call, maybe. Um, when it comes to assisting with the in-out calls, I would say probably when I'm down refing, I would say probably maybe about 50% of the time I'm giving them one of these, because on especially like 16 and over, and moving into NCAA, and some of these high school girls, they're hitting with enough power to where you're not going to be able to transition fast enough after you're making a very valid and due diligent assessment on the center line to check for a violation before transitioning to where the attack goes. So yeah, so the reason why I wanted to spend a little time on this is because it by happenstance, that's probably, as a down ref, that's probably the biggest thing I get, the biggest gripe from coaches and overhearing from spectators that I get more than anything else is, oh, come on, that ball was in. Well, I didn't see it. How could you not see that ball? That was clearly in. I didn't see it because it's, not my job to look at in out calls. Well, your referee should, and this isn't a conversation I've had. This is, like that devil's advocate thing, like the things that you can say. As a referee, I would never tell somebody, like, well, I didn't see it because I wasn't looking. Um, I would say something along the lines of my primary job is the net and the center line, and transitioning to the attack, or where the ball was in and out afterwards. Sometimes I don't make it there soon enough, so I couldn't visualize where the ball landed. That's why we have line judges in an R1. So I get that gripe a lot. You know, like how could you not see it? It was on your side, and how could you not see it was over here? That's because the R2 is focused on something else completely. So at this point, I want to move really quickly, and I'm gonna close it out here because it's a little after 6:30, and I kind of wanted to try to keep it under about 45 minutes here. But I wanted to speak a little bit about how it works for us as far as getting matches. Um, let's see. There's a vision test that establishes your dominant eye and shows how bias prevails if you're watching the ball. You know what? I would love to see. I didn't know that, Eric. Yeah, that's. But it is. It stands to reason. I do have a background in guns and stuff. I was in the army for 10 years, and it's kind of the same thing with skateboarding or snowboarding or shooting. Anything you've got a dominant foot, you've got a dominant hand, you've got a dominant eye. And yeah, I'm sure you're probably kind of alluding to this. If you're not paying attention or really kind of cognizant of what you're doing, that dominant eye could probably take over a little bit and maybe have a little bias to what you're seeing. Uh, yeah. Oh yeah. Yep. There you go. You see two images and process the one you prefer. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think I've actually heard that phenomenon before. And sometimes the brain can fill in the gaps too. So you as a referee, you want to make sure you're seeing what you're seeing and not what your brain is wanting to fill in. Um, so I wanted to go over a little bit of how we work as referees. Anecdotally, I was on my way into it was Mission Concepcion, one of the tournaments down there. And as I was getting my stuff out of the car, a parent actually walked by me, and I'm about to spill the beans here. Uh, that it's I'm that guy. Like I'm that guy. I tend to be that guy sometimes. I'm a little verbose, a little kind of friendly and jokey and stuff like that. And I would, but the girls know that when I'm on the stand, I'm on the stand. I'm there to officiate a game, and uh, gonna keep them within those confines. Um, but as I was getting my stuff out of the car, a gentleman walks by me. He's a parent. He says, "Oh, you know, you've been going to a lot of tournaments when you get out of the car and your daughter says, 'Oh, there's my favorite ref.'" And I just kind of laughed. And I was like, "Oh, wow, yeah, so your reputation preceded me." Um, but that kind of is a segue to how referees get matches. And in the three codes, they're handled completely differently. So I'm like really pulling back the curtain here, and it's not like an open secret or anything like that. It's not something like the NSA is going to come find me. But here's the deal. Um, so what's the weirdest match? Mark, you asking what the weirdest moment in any match you've officiated. So we I want to answer that right now. So the weirdest thing that I've ever officiated was actually recently, and it's weird but fortuitous in a way. Like I don't know if you call it weird, but here's the basic meat and potatoes of it. Um, a lot of people kind of like blow off the Libro tracker, and it's hey baby, your dad's here. Oh, okay. So the Libero tracker, everybody kind of blows off the sheet, and it's like, oh yeah, okay, well the Libero tracker this, and they help with substitutions, and yeah, okay. So I had a situation where a team was using two Libros, and they were swapping them like crazy, and you want to, so that's weird. So you want to talk about a weird thing? Like I have never come into this before. Like just like every dead ball, one was going out, one was coming in, one, I mean, every something was happening every single dead ball. And I even remember looking over at the Libero track, and I said, hey, you really need to pay attention to these guys because they are making a lot of replacements. You need to really pay attention. And I wish I had it with me. So towards the end of the match, um there the the first referee, I was down refing the first referee. She was trying to do some preventative officiating. Bless her soul. She was like, "You guys are out of rotation." She was trying to help them get in the right positions. You're out of rotation. You're out of rotation. And then they got a rotation fault. Bottom line, she's like, "I told you. I told you." And then when they were receiving, I noticed the same thing. Um, Long story short, for brevity, They were replacing their libero. They were they were putting the libero in, and when the libero came out, the player went back in, and then a different libero would on a new dead ball. The other libero would come in, and then when they made an exchange back, the player would go into the wrong space, wrong place. So they were faulting every time they did that. The coach didn't seem to understand what was going on, and the first referee was absolutely correct. It was just difficult getting them in the right place. But here's where I say it was weird. Once I explained to the coach, the match had ended. They ended up losing. Once the match ended, I ended up explaining to the coach what was going on, and the coach didn't really understand. She's like, "Oh, I can put the libero in anywhere." It's like, yes, you can put your libero in anywhere. By the way, I say libero, not libero. You put your libero in anywhere, but when the player comes back in, it has to be replaced by the same player that came out. And she's like, "Well, no, any player can replace it." I was like, "No, no, 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 no. If number one goes out and the libero comes in, when the libero goes out, number one has to come back in." And she's like, "Oh no, okay, well, all right, I didn't know that or whatever, whatever." And so we looked at the score sheet, and it turns out the score sheet was wrong. She had marked it wrong. And then after the match, it dawned on me. It's like, wait a second, let me pull up that libero tracker. And the libero tracker said right there, 14 libero 4. And I was like, wow. So like, yeah, yeah, yeah. We have a reason to pay attention to that libero tracker sheet for sure. A squirrel land in the middle of your court for a 16th match. Oh man. Oh, I bet they freaked out. Anyways, all right, I'm gonna move on here. You guys can keep chatting away in the chat box. So how, again, kind of recapping real quick, how we go about it, the three codes, how we get our matches, or how we work essentially. Like I said, it's not an open secret. It's not even a secret. Nobody's gonna come bend my dog tags or stamp no dessert on my meal card or anything. But NFHS, USAV, and PAVO, they assign matches in three very, very different ways. So I'd like to start with the NFHS side. So the NFHS side moves all the way down to the local chapter for assignment. As a part of San Antonio Volleyball Officials Association, we have an assigner in our chapter. Our assigner assigns us a match based on how far we live, or what matches we can do, or what we qualify based on experience and seniority and things like that. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, out of about 100 referees, we have about 240 referees in our chapter. So out of out of 200 referees, they go down the list and just start assigning referees to those matches. Usually, and of course, all the games get covered. Sometimes we have referees left over. Sometimes we may need a referee, have to move things around. That's an NFHS as far as high school goes. PAVO, NCAA is models that particular format insofar as it is there's a signer for the match. Each division, each conference has their own assigner, and essentially, if that assigner doesn't know who you are, they're not going to assign you to a match. Bottom line. So the assigner's got to know you, knows how you work, and so on and so forth. USAV. So and the reason why I wanted to explain this, or talk about this, is when you get a referee at a match and you're like, oh, not this referee again, or oh, why am I seeing the same referees over and over again, or there's so many referees. Why do we have to have this guy or this girl, or oh, I really like that guy, or man, or why can't you come and referee this match, or why can't you go over here? So AES is a system that we use to track lots of volleyball stuff. I won't go into that. We find tournaments that we are available for, and we put in for it. We say, hey, I'm available for this tournament. The tournament director goes in there and either accepts you or doesn't. Some tournament directors will wait until kind of the last minute to see how many officials he needs, or who is going to apply. A good example of that is like regionals, or like the end of season tournaments, the ones the bid tournaments, things like that. They want to see who is putting in, so they can choose their referees and choose them wisely. So much like any, and you know what, and I'm gonna be very forthright right now I'm going to be very, very open and transparent. We're going to talk about I want to talk about the good things, and I also want to talk about the bad things. I want to talk about everything that can be talked about, which is, I mean, we're not the Secret Service. But I do want to talk about the things that maybe people don't want to talk about. And will we ruffle some feathers? We might. I don't know. We might ruffle some feathers. I'm hoping we don't. Will I get my hand slapped? Maybe. I don't know. But again, as the way I see it is, as long as I preface all my conversations by me not representing any particular entity, I just represent myself as a referee. The most punitive that can happen to me is that people won't assign me for matches. I highly doubt that'll happen. But I do want to be like, this is the kind of forum where I want it to be open, transparent. The big thing is I want parents and spectators to know what it's like to be on the stand as a referee. So I do want to get into like the emotional aspect of it, the physical aspect of it, the mental aspect of it. So with that said, um, that's how we work. That's how we get assigned matches, and we're accepted by those directors. We're not entirely privy to how they are accepted. If you're a tournament director, then that would be awesome if you shared it with us. But uh, let's see. Let's see here. Oh, I just activated one of those little polls. I'm still figuring all this stuff out, so it's fun. Anyway, so being a referee, these key skills for volleyball referees to have, obviously have that keen observation, that common sense, and that accountability and adaptability to situations, integrity and communication, both verbal and nonverbal. So those are things that are really, really important to have as a referee. Not every parent can get up there and make judgments like a referee can. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes training, consistently training, being a student of the game, reading the rules book over and over and over again, going to the clinics, seeing what can be done to better yourself, and soliciting feedback. Part of our decision making process is, as a referee during match play, is is finding that sweet spot in our algorithm of how we observe a match, watching from contact to contact. And again, like, I can't stress it enough, we're watching the player, not the ball, the player, not the ball, the hands, not the ball, the contact, not the ball. And that is like essential. Those kinds of things and that kind of mentality is essential to being a skilled and proficient referee. But that consistency in ball handling and ball handling faults is also important. But that's some of the things that I want to go over in other. I hope to do this again. In closing, kind of here, I really appreciate all you guys that have come, and the kids are getting out of control now. I really appreciate you guys tuning in to this little Facebook Live. Um, Again, the takeaway here was just kind of go over a brief overview of, like, I know I talked for about 50 minutes now. Brief overview of what a referee does, as far as the R1, R2. Boo. Um, in next iterations of this little referee perspective, the next one I want to go over is some misconceptions of rules and rules violations. What is a rule? What's not a rule? What is enforced? Not enforced? And this is my son Ronan. Say hi. He's just staring now. But thanks for joining me, guys. I really appreciate it, Mark, Eric, and everybody else out there. I'll reach out to you guys. I'm going to leave my email in the comments. Let's see, certified b-ball ref at he's in here. This email, I made this email just for general purpose for all my officiating duties. Please send me an email. I'll keep posting in the Dad's Volleyball. I want to reach out to the Mom's Volleyball group. Send me topics. You want to hear about things. You want to talk about things. You got questions. Oh, Mark, yeah, I'm gonna write that down. I'll have it in the comments. So, FisherVB@gmail. But yeah, you got there's Optimus Prime. Please, again, send me your questions, send me your comments, what you want to hear about, what you want to talk about. Maybe we can get this thing, launched a little bit to a wider audience. But yeah, getting the word out there, getting these parents to stop yelling at these referees. And the absolute thing that I didn't go over because I didn't put it in my notes, but I absolutely wanted to talk about in my very first iteration is the words lift and carry. Lift and carry. Say them with me. Lift and carry. Those two rules or those two words do not, I repeat, do not appear anywhere. Anywhere. Lift and carry do not appear anywhere in the USAV rulebook. Anywhere. So whenever I hear a coach or even a player or a spectator, oh, that was a carry, well, then you don't know what you're talking about. In my head, obviously, I say in my head, because carry's not a thing. Oh, that was a lift. This is the signal. Yes, right. This is a lift, but this is ball handling fault, not a lift. A lift does not exist in the rule book. It would be a catch and throw. So both carries and lifts would be under the rule of catch and throw or prolonged contact. So that is my closing bit of trivia for you. Again, I hope to see you on the next one. And thanks for joining me. I appreciate it, guys. And I'm going to sign off now, however I do that. Oh, this button right here.